Are we recording now?
It has started.
Okay, so are we accepting other people into the meeting yet?
There's nobody else lurking out there right now.
Oh my God, it's only 15 of us. This is the first time I see so few people at the land use meeting. Only 15.
Linda, are you sure? I see 77 people waiting.
You do?
I'm just kidding.
You scared me, Trevor. I'm gonna
That's
try
so
to.
not funny, Trevor.
I'm gonna try to scare back on you if there's any opportunity. Okay, so it's 6:36 and let's start the meeting. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Community Board 3 Land Use Committee meeting for Wednesday, December 9th, 2020. We are conducting the meeting through Zoom tonight, and my vice chair, Linda, is managing the platform, and she's gonna give a brief introduction about the Zoom functions and also some basic guidelines. Linda.
Okay, so the basic guidelines for an outline of how the meeting goes is that we will have committee discussion of the issue tonight. We don't have a formal presentation first. When the committee is done with their questions and discussion, we will entertain questions and discussion from the public. If you wish to speak, whether you're on the committee or in the public, please raise your hand. And if you don't know how to raise your hand, you click on participants at the bottom, and then you'll see the little hand and you can click it. Okay.
Yep. And did you mention that we only use the chat box to check in?
Oh,
and
yeah.
ask?
And in fact, we should use the chat box to check in. So if you're here and you're not a member of the committee, please just put your name and affiliation in the chat box, but do not use the chat box for side discussions.
Right, thank you, Linda. And I also want to emphasize that everyone who wants to speak should raise their hands first and get recognized by the chairperson, even committee members. This is to maintain the order of the meeting so we can move it better and faster. Thank you, Linda. Michael, can you please do a roll calling to take the attendance, please?
Sure. Jackie?
Yes, here.
Linda?
Here.
Michael, present. Dominic?
Yes.
Jonathan?
Yes.
Herman?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Lisa?
Here.
Olympia?
Here.
Damaris? I don't see her on the list, so I'll keep going. Troy?
Yes.
Thank you, Troy. Steve?
He cannot make it tonight.
Okay. And Tim? I don't see him either. Okay. All set.
Thank you, Michael. So tonight, our first item on the agenda is to approve the minutes for our November meeting. So let me know if any one of you have problem with it, or we'll just approve it. Okay, so I see no questions. The minute is approved. And next item is the DCP's application for the citywide zoning text amendment on zoning for coastal flood resiliency. And there are a couple points I want to make before we go on discussion. So I did mention that the Referral, when the Referral was referred back to the committee at the full board, I did mention that I don't plan to change our position. However, since the full board did not make a position on this issue, and if committee members have any other thoughts on our position, it can be brought up tonight. Although I don't sense that coming, but I just want to put it out there. Like I said before, Jim already has a lot of come time, and I don't want to add more to it. So Jim is only scheduled to be with us for 2 hours tonight. Hopefully we can finish it earlier, but just take advantage of his presence and expertise. I mean, because I feel like this plan is very extensive and complicated. And if you have anything regarding like technical, you can ask Jim. And listen to his opinions. So I had sent you a list of points to be added to the Referral. These are the points that I put together from the comments I received. And for the sake of avoiding chaos during the discussion, I want Michael to bring the base solution from last month to the floor first. And then we'll discuss each point on the list and then move to amend the resolution by inserting the language of the points. I want to take this piece by piece, so we are not arguing about different parts of the proposed language. If we spend 5 to 10 minutes on each amendment, we can go through this quickly and orderly. I think we will spend a bit more time on number 1, but move fairly quick for the rest. So I guess, Michael, can you share the base solution from last month with us?
From last month? Yeah, sure. 1 second. Sorry, I have like 10 more docs open. I'm trying to clear up my screen.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, can everyone see?
Yes. Can you go to the second page? So I just want to read that therefore be resolved clause. So basically, this is a continuation. We are continuing the discussion from last month. I want to read it out. Community Board 3 disapproves of application and 210095CRY, the zoning for coastal flood resilience, citywide zoning text amendment with following concerns and observations. And then we're gonna insert the comments from the points that I share with you. Are you guys okay with that? Okay, so.
Sorry, Jackie, I have my hand up.
Sure. Let me see. Yes, Olympia.
Thank you. So I think that when Jim wrote this, the whereases are just enlisting everything that was in the ZCFR, that we don't need to enlist everything because we're not addressing everything. And I think we may need to change a few of the whereas depending on the therefore. You know what I mean? Right now, you have 14 whereases, 18 whereases that you may not be actually commenting upon, and you don't need them. It's going to be just confusing. So it needs some editing, this part.
How about this? When we finalize the points and then we come back to see what do we need and what we don't need for the whereas clauses.
Personally, I think that's unnecessary. I think it's fine. It's just summarizing the bill. It's not saying these are the things we're referring to. I don't see, I'd rather not go through 18 points and decide whether or not we've talked about them.
Thank you, Lisa.
Just an introduction.
Okay, so I'm gonna go as planted. Let's just go to the point number 1. Michael, can you pull out the points I share with you guys?
Sorry, I was on mute. Let me stop screen sharing real quick to pull it up.
Sure.
This document, right?
Yep. Thank you. So I think one of the concern we have from last meeting is that we thought that these zoning change would incentivize and encourage large new development in our area, in our district. And I guess most of the concern would be like, for example, the Two Bridges area and such. And I want to hear Jim's opinion and also Trevor, because I feel like after the ESCR is done, our district may not have as much as floodplain as right now. So just curious what Trevor's input on that too. So Jim, do you like to go first?
Yeah, sure. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So let's address, so just so everyone understands, what this first item, actually, Jackie and I just kind of went back and looked at the transcript from last month and tried to make kind of, trying to aggregate what we were hearing from people and put it together in what could be an amendment, you know, to the existing base resolution. I mean, I think this would probably be something that could be added as like a whereas, and then also maybe with a therefore. But I wanted to clarify, I think, just so we are clear. I mean, the DCP kept referring to this as an incentive last month, and I think that that's accurate to an extent, but as I thought about it more over the last 20 days or so, I think what we want to be clear about is what exactly it's incentivizing. And that's where I think I've started to rethink this a little bit. I mentioned it last month, but I hadn't thought it really through all the way yet. So I think one of the issues is I don't know that this program in and of itself incentivizes new development where there is not development today. And I think that the reason why is the way that they're structuring the program is, you know, you can relocate additional developable floor area in a building to a higher elevation, but you're not gaining net new floor area. You know, you're not gaining net new residential units in that building. So I'm not certain that extra height, you know, without like the addition of, you know, significant developable floor area is alone going to encourage a developer who, you know, wasn't going to build in the floodplain to now say, yes, this is financially viable now, I will do it. Now, I do think it incentivizes something. And it took me a while to come to this conclusion, but I think what it does incentivize is not new development per se, but it incentivizes resiliency measures, but only in a certain building typology, right? I think that is the kind of key incentive here, that it largely only encourages resiliency measures in new construction. So I don't think it's per se encouraging new construction, but it is mostly only encouraging resiliency in new construction, because I just don't see, after thinking about it more and more, how that extra exemption would really make a rehab financially viable for, you know, an old tenement building or an old multifamily building to, you know, relocate mechanicals or ground floor residential uses to a higher elevation. So I just wanted to open up with that to kind of be specific about what we're concerned about incentivizing. And then the other thing is, I think, yeah, I just want to echo Jackie's point that I feel like they didn't emphasize this enough last month, but, you know, we have the flood maps as they exist now, but they are going to be very different after ESCR is complete. And we don't know when that's necessarily going to happen, although we can picture this out to maybe 5 or 6 years from now. So I think when we're thinking about this, a lot of the current floodplain in kind of the East Village neighborhood, a lot of those buildings may ultimately not even be subject to these requirements if they are ultimately out of the floodplain after ESCR. I do think we want to pay special attention to the Two Bridges neighborhood. If you look on the map that that DCP provided last month, there's currently a smaller area of buildings down there in the floodplain. But I think after ESCR, that's going to be the majority of the eligible buildings in the district. I can't say for sure because we would have to wait to see how those flood maps change, but that's just what I'm thinking at the moment. So it's just a way to focus the conversation and like what the impact might be. That's all from me for right now.
Thank you, Trevor, and then Olympia.
What I will add, that my concern is really about current buildings. In fact, the building I live in, which is affordable, is undergoing a significant rehab where we are moving mechanicals to the roof. In fact, this weekend, we're getting a generator on top of the roof. Now, and there were some incentives to do that. I'm not exactly sure what they were. But if we were in a height area that had height restrictions, that might be a little more difficult. I'm sure they could file for some sort of variance, but that's my concern in terms of buildings that are doing this. And I think there are at least 3 in the Two Bridges area who are doing this, where we're either moving mechanicals. And I know there was at least some talk about changing the ground floor uses of some of the buildings. I don't think that's going to happen, but there was some talk about it. With regards to the ESCR, just for clarification, the ECR stops at Montgomery Street, and then the BMCR begins from Montgomery Street to the Brooklyn Bridge, which would actually be BMCR. They were not clear on that, how the new maps would affect that area, because we're not actually lifting the ground as we are in the ESCR area. I just did want to make sure we don't restrict a lot of the tenement buildings or multifamily buildings, which are affordable, strip that ability for them to move mechanicals, which is extremely important, such as generators or boilers, to a different level, or at least add some emergency power backups to different levels. And I don't have the expertise to determine whether this prohibits that, but that is the primary concern for me.
Trevor, I just wanted to piggyback on your points that I actually had a conversation with Jim on that. I use Knickerbocker as an example for the discussion. And like, I guess, like, to encourage them to move the mechanicals to the top of their building, it actually will vacate their space in the basement, right? And they already have business in their basement, and if I remember correctly, they have one or two medical office in their basement, and by vacating their basement, looks like they can convert that for more commercial use. But then I also think that, I mean, most of these affordable housing complex, their finance is not really strong. So by giving them, even if we are giving them that kind of a new income, is that really problematic? I mean, I mean, to me, it seems like it's also supporting those low income and moderate income residents in those buildings. So, I mean, since you brought this up, I didn't put this in the points because that was just a private discussion between me and Jim, but I just feel like since you bring this up, I want to add on that.
Right, and I think our building is using a number of incentives to move. It's not a straight up cost. It doesn't affect the rent rolls for people who live in the building. And my building, as do others, also have commercial storefronts or some sort on the ground floor, which help the commercial, the residential building. So I think, I mean, I don't think those incentivizing commercial development in affordable buildings is a bad thing, because it helps the financial stability of the building overall.
Thank you. Olympia.
So my reading actually differs with your reading, Jim, and I basically see very clearly how is this an incentive, because it lowers the cost of making business. This is a law mandated by the building code. You are constructing in the flood zone. You don't need an incentive to abide by the law. If the law is you need to have weatherization and you need to have flood proofing, you have to do it. You have to pay for that. Instead, what we're saying now, we're going to find a way for you to offset that cost. So this is a clear incentive, and it goes to private development of new construction, and it makes it more palatable to construct in an area that as a city, we know we'd rather think about it more before attracting new developments there, because it is a flood zone and because new development does impact already vulnerable populations that live there. And so I clearly see this, how it is an incentive. And I also believe that there is a little bit of confusion in terms of what happens with pre-existing buildings. Pre-existing buildings, we hope, will have other programs. Right now, with this zoning thing, only if they have a very high level of reconstruction, they would be able to use any of these, incentive. And so I think that we should say we have no problem with anything that is a technical amendment in order for the zoning to not contradict the law that is the building code, right? So the building code has been updated because this is a flood zone, and after Sandy, we know what that means. The same way it's updated after seismic accidents or other issues. And so the technical amendments should go forward, but what we are against is the idea of these very obvious subsidies that are in there. And the second thing is that the building code is currently, I think, mandatory only in the 100-year flood zone. And these incentives, this ZCFR is extending them to the 500-year flood zone. And I think what would that actually end up meaning is that new construction that has more capital will actually be more flood proofed, and others who don't have capital, they cannot do it. So I believe the best way to do it is to make it a mandate. And then if there is low-income construction, you subsidize, but you actually want to make sure all the communities have equal safety from flood. And about the ESCR comment, I don't think at all that the work that we are doing with, the ESCR elevation, and if they're going to do anything in the harbor, is a permanent solution. So I feel we need to always build with the understanding that there is a climate change, and if it's not the river, it's going to be extreme rainfall. So there are different issues. So I believe we need to behave as if this zoning is important for a flood zone. We should not be presuming, as you suggested, Jackie, that this may be less of a flood zone because maybe, after the park is finished, maybe in 8 or 10 years, and we don't know what's going to be happening in the other side, it's going to work. And before I leave, because as I said, I have to leave, one comment that it hasn't been mentioned yet, it is the streetscape. Because the streetscape, the vibrancy of the public space is actually could be very much impacted by zoning regulation. And zoning is an inflexible tool. So we do not
Olympia,
want...
we need to be on the points, like I said before, like the beginning of the meeting. So
I was trying to be helpful because I shared all the comments, and I will not be here, and I saw that you ignored that comment. I wanted to put it in the record, but of course, the floor is back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Olympia. Trevor?
Just one comment, and I see someone in the comments says that they can't raise their hand.
I'm sorry.
But let me just be real quick clarification on Olympia's point about ESCR and floodplains. That's actually incorrect, because this zoning is based on flood maps. So after ESCR, the flood maps will change. That has nothing to do with as to whether there will be flooding or whether it works. The flood maps will change, and this will no longer apply. Just a point of clarification on that.
Michael, you have a question. I'm sorry, I didn't see your hand.
No, it's fine. It's not a big deal. Yeah, I think, I think the point here that says it encourages large development, I don't know that that's how I would describe it. I mean, I think I agree with Jim in what he was saying. I don't think that there are floor area exemptions, but they're not massive, and they're not like bonuses or something. Yeah. I think we sort of understood that at the last meeting, but maybe we weren't being clear enough about it, or maybe we're trying to think of two things at once. But I think for me personally, it seems like this is really geared towards developments that are much smaller in parts of Brooklyn, like in places, in places that have very different building typologies than we do. And so I think that it would just, I think the proposal would be better if it was modified to target different types of development differently, because like Olympia just said, it doesn't make sense that this this text amendment will in a way be easier for new construction, which is, especially in our district, usually very different than like what a small home owner in South Brooklyn has. So I guess that's my comment. I think that it would be more powerful if it was different for different types of building typologies or different sizes of building.
Thank you, Michael. I want to hear from other committee members. I just not sure that if I agree with what Olympia said before, how this would reduce the cost for the developers to do the resilience improvement.
I don't think she was saying it would reduce the cost.
Yeah.
I think she was saying that this is burdensome and is expensive, and
right.
Big developers are more likely to be able to take on that cost than like a small homeowner that already has an existing house in Brooklyn. I think that's what she was saying. I'm not sure.
Okay. Jim, can we hear from other committee members first and then come back to you? Thank you, Jim. Other committee members, do you have any opinion on that? How do we take on this larger and new development issue? Lisa, do you have any opinion? I'm sorry to call you on the spot.
Well, I had suggested some wording, and it appears there. So yeah.
Would you be comfortable with we make it some little bit of like changes?
Sure,
to that?
of course.
Okay. I see Jim. I'm gonna go back to you before Connor.
Yeah, I'll be really brief. I think we're not as far apart on this all as it seems like at the moment. Because what I was trying to point out before, I agree with the point that Michael brought up. I think part of the issue is that we're maybe overstating that what it will do is induce like a certain type of large development. So I think we want to maybe be more precise with that language, but I also don't want to dismiss. I think what Olympia is saying is absolutely right in terms of how this policy kind of privileges certain building typologies and type development, right? My point that I was trying to kind of parse is that I don't think this alone will trigger new development at a significant scale. But I do agree that, a like higher capitalized developer is much more likely to do this than the owner of an existing building, just based on the finances, right? And actually, if anything, based on how limited the actual incentive from the city is financially, right? Then there's limited subsidy available besides this. We talked about that with Steve Harris at earlier meetings. So I think you might want to say something that's like, the issue here is that the zoning incentives that do exist through this program, they concentrate all the they may concentrate the resiliency improvements in new construction, and that leaves behind, the many existing buildings, multifamily buildings, old tenement buildings in the floodplain, who now they will have additional zoning flexibility, but no financial flexibility to take advantage of it. So that's just, I think that is an important distinction, and we might want to try to capture that.
Yeah, that
was in my second point.
Yes. So if we want to be more precise, then I don't know if I could ask someone, Jim or Lisa, trouble either one of you, to maybe start working on the language for the first point. And then in the second point, Lisa and I had a background discussion, and we also agreed that we feel like certain type of housings don't have the financial ability to go through this kind of work, and it is on the second point. So Jim, maybe I can trouble you. Could you look at like first point and second point while we continue to discuss, and to see, based on what we just talked about, we could modify the language to fit what we want. I think you are right. We are not that far from that. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, I'll work on that.
Thank you, Jim. Connor?
Hi, yeah, thanks for having me. And I had a question, and I'm happy to support with this conversation as I can, because I've also been spending a lot of time on this.
Yeah.
beefy text amendment. Just Olympia made a point about the building code, the resiliency building codes that are referenced by the construction standards and the, the flood elevation and things as being required in the floodplain. Is that something that because that's something that I hadn't come across as like these construction standards being required and then these being ways to make it easier to do it. I had sort of been reading it as an opt-in process, but I just wanted to ask that question. Thank you.
Let me see if Olympia is still here. I mean, it
No,
didn't.
I think I can answer that if you, I don't think she is. There are building code requirements that require some special zoning, not special zoning, but special approaches to the construction that are part of the building code. That's the section D, I think it's referred to in the documents. And those are required. And what these zoning changes are supposed to do are to make it easier to accommodate those. So it will say in the, for instance, that you can't put, if you're building in the 100-year floodplain, not the 500-year, you can't put the boiler in the basement. But it doesn't say that you can go higher if you want to put that boiler on the roof.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, Lisa, that's right.
Is the questions of like dry flood proofing and wet flood proofing, do you know if those are required by the building code or are those opt-in?
I don't know specifically, to be honest. Maybe, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't aware of wet and dry proof from the past, so I don't know on that too. And Jim, I'm sorry, I have to go back to you on the language of the second point that we are going to work on. The zoning is not the best tool and subsidy is needed. I think it wants to talk about existing buildings. I want the language to be more explicit, talking about tenement buildings and also
why just tenements?
Not just tenements, but also, I mean, or using them as example, and also existing larger complex. I don't know what is the right wording because I want to see buildings like Knickerbocker Village and also those Section 8 buildings also covered, and maybe Trevor can help with that.
Well, then, is there any reason why we need to specify? I mean, it's every building in the floodplain.
Yeah, it's a higher density.
Every building, okay. Mm-hmm.
It's higher density. I think what you were trying to differentiate is in a single family or, small density area, it might be one thing, but the way I worded it in the second point, it talks about higher density. So
okay. I
think that we're talking about anything, that, I'll make this up, anything over R5.
Okay.
And all of our, I don't think there's anywhere in CB3 that's under a 7, R7 density. 3.66 FAR.
Thank you, Lisa. So should we move to, I mean, basically first point and second point are similar, I mean, are related. So Jim, should we move to second while you are working on the first, editing the first point?
If you could, I mean, if someone can, move to amend it or play, or insert it somewhere in the resolution, be my guest. I'm still editing the first piece.
Okay, and then let's talk about the second point then while Jim is editing the first point. So the second point, basically it is similar to what we just discussed a little bit earlier. We think that zoning is not really the best tool to address this issue because certain building types are not able to afford that kind of changes in certain compared to larger developers, and we want we propose subsidies should be included for them. However, I also feel like DCP is not an agency that's gonna deal with subsidies. I mean, the language is there, but I feel like is that really something that gonna? I mean, you put the points out there, but is that something really gonna work for DCP or not? I mean, other committee members, do you have any opinion on that?
This is Damaris. Can I just talk? Or
Yes.
am I? Hi.
Hi, Damaris.
I got my camera off because I'm starving and I'm eating, and I really don't want you people to see me eating.
We don't want to see you either.
I'm sorry. I didn't even want to tell you because I know it was torture, you know, but you don't really need. I think that we put that in there not so much because DCP is going to do I think we're giving a rationale, right, for like what we're thinking, what our position is, and we're saying zoning, and you know, zoning is not a tool, and what we really need is subsidy. And by the way, I'm making that assumption because I can't completely read the document because it's too small.
Michael, can you help a little bit? Yeah, thank you.
Sorry about that.
Damaris, can you see it?
I still think that's the case. I think, you know, we're saying that, you know, to address this issue, you know, it's not zoning that's gonna be the best tool, but it is, you know, looking at, you know, resources and subsidies. Whether, you know, that doesn't mean we're saying DCP give that. It just means, you know, we're giving them a rationale for why we believe, or why we're saying, making this comment to begin with.
Thank you, Damaris.
That's what I think. Yeah.
And you got a point.
Damaris.
Okay, great. So I guess point number 2 just sustained. We don't need to, if nobody wants to change the language, we just keep the entire paragraphs and move on. Okay. Before I move to the non-conforming use, I want to go back to what Olympia just brought up a little bit earlier. She talked about like 100 years floodplain versus 500 years floodplain. I mean, I sent her notes to all of you before the meeting yesterday. I don't know if you guys care so much about that part or not. I didn't put that, but if you guys think we want to keep it in the reso, I'm open for it. Okay, so.
I mean, this is related, I guess, but you know, I guess my problem with this in general is just like, you know, in terms of a climate resiliency, like forward thinking, I don't know, text amendment that DCP could be doing. I just don't feel like lifting regulatory burdens and some of the other things in this text amendment are what we should be doing to plan for flooding in the next 20 or 30 or 50 years. Like you know, I guess I'm not sure how helpful this comment is, but it just, you know, again, I don't think it incentivizes. And I hear what they were saying last month with saying, you know, we have a finite amount of land and we obviously can't say you can't build on the 100 and 500 year floodplains. That's pretty unrealistic. But I just feel that there could be more meat in this that does more for the people of New York City to better prepare for for climate change and sea level rising, and not just, you know, making it slightly easier to lift HVAC systems and things like that. I think that the city could be doing more, and I'm not really, I don't know. I'm a little bit, I guess, disappointed in this in terms of like a broad forward thinking piece of I guess it's not legislation, but a text amendment to think about climate resiliency. I know it's kind of broad and it doesn't necessarily address the first or second points, but maybe that's more like a whereas clause or something.
Okay. I mean, I like I said before, I don't have a very strong opinion on that. I think it is a big thing, and just like one sentence, does it really like have impact or not? But Lisa, are you going to talk about it? Lisa, do you have an opinion on that? Or no? Okay, so can she hear me? Lisa, I think you are muted. Are you talking?
I was muted, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. Let me think about an answer to that. I'll get back to you.
Okay, all right. Okay, and then in that case, we are just going to go to point number 3. Point number 3, I'm gonna give you guys some background on it. Basically, it is right now. If you let's say if it was a residential use, and we call it non-conforming because it is used as a commercial right now, and if the business is not doing and being vacated for 2 years, the law requires you to be reverted back to residential. However, under this new proposal, this new plan, if a place is declared a disaster area, that clock actually stops for 2 years. So the maximum you would get 4 years, and the minimum you are getting 2 years. And now, but then community board receive a lot of complaints about this non-conforming use from the past. I mean, I don't have a lot of experience on that because I believe it's more related to SLA. And Lisa used to sit on SLA for quite a while. So maybe Lisa has more thoughts on this. Lisa, do you have any problem with the language?
Sorry, no, I don't have it. Am I on mute? Can you hear me?
Yeah,
I can hear you.
I'm trying to work on some wording at the same time. Sorry, so I'm going off line. But no, I don't have any. The issue comes from the fact that there are so many bars and restaurants that are grandfathered in residential areas that have been problematic in our community board for a long time. And one of the ways that we've been able to reduce that number is strict enforcement of the grandfather clause, which says that if that restaurant doesn't continually operate and there's a 2-year break in its operation, then it no longer can't reestablish itself in a residential zone. So this zoning ordinance or this text amendment would extend that period for at any point that there was a, like there is now a executive order that suspends development. So I think the thinking was that we should not allow an extension because it would only add to the number of, or it would not help us reduce the number of bars and restaurants that were that were existing in residential zones where they otherwise can't exist under the zoning. Sorry, I don't think I made that any clearer.
You're very clear. You are very clear. I mean, personally, when I was reading this paragraph, I feel like I actually wanted to support, like personally, this like on my personal level, I wanted to support this pause. However, I don't know SLA enough. I've never really heard about people's complaint about how the bars are troubling their lives. So I don't want to put my personal.
But yeah, oh yeah. I mean, there aren't that many that are still existing on residential streets that wouldn't otherwise be allowed, but there are quite a few.
I see. I mean, it's just that like to me, when I was reading this paragraphs, I was like, oh, if this is a declared disaster, I mean, we want to support more to the small business and everything, but I guess like I don't know enough about like these people, the residents' complaints. But thank you for that. So other committee members, do you have problem with this language, this paragraph? Damaris.
I just have a question. I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. So the current amendment would suspend this 2-year period of vacancy to revert back to residential. What exactly does that do? Does that mean that if the property becomes vacant, immediately it reverts back to residential?
No, it would still have the 2 years, but what this legislation says that is if there is an extraordinary event like there is now under the executive order of COVID where no construction can happen, then that 2 years can be extended for as long as that executive order is in effect. So
another 2 years, if I understand the
up to, yeah.
Up to 2 years, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be 4
like
years.
Now there's the executive order's been in effect for like 9 months. So it would be 2 years and 9 months would be the period rather than just 2 years. You understand? Is that clear, Damaris?
It is, but I mean, I don't even see that in the text at all. So I'm so confused.
No, believe me, it's there.
Huh?
It's in the
plan, yeah.
It's in the text, yeah.
Okay.
It was mentioned in the summary stuff that in the presentation that they made, but I don't think.
Damaris, do you want me to email you the
it's just not here. You're saying it's in the original text. I got it. Understood.
Right. Yep. Okay, so other committee members, do you have any problem with this language? If not, then we're going to move to nursing homes. Thank you. Michael, can you enlarge that part, please? Pull it up a little bit higher.
Sure, sorry.
Thank you. I'm getting old. I like these are so tiny to me.
No, it's hard with the screen share because it's not the same size as my screen. It's much smaller for you all.
I see. For the nursing home, I feel like we don't have a lot of, I have heard some people disagree with this point, but then I feel like most of our committee members seems to be okay with this point. I mean, the issue is that I feel like I don't want to limit the building or expanding of nursing home beds in our neighborhood and also other supportive housings, that kind of thing. I understand the reasoning why DCP want to limit it, but I also feel like a lot of this issue can be resolved by better planning of infrastructure and also emergency protocol. And also like Lisa brought up a very good point right after last meeting that hospital is also, hospital requires a lot of support, life supporting equipments, but then they are exempt and we feel like even though, I mean, I just imagine if we are going to build something on the infield or 2 bridges, I don't mind if they are nursing homes, even though I understand the risk we have to take. And I just thinking like if Florida can build nursing homes, why cannot New York? That's just my point. And I want to know if Trevor.
I just want to add one thing that, one thing that I think we're kind of missing is that it's not so much constructing and nursing homes and hospitals along the floodplain and along the waterfront, which I think is problematic in its own way, is that you still have an evacuation order, even if you have safety protocols. And evacuating hospitals and nursing homes can be challenging, right, especially if the storm is not as predictable as a hurricane. And I think most cities, they do have them, but they want to avoid putting in a direct line of where you might need to evacuate. And I don't necessarily, I don't have an opinion one way or another, but just bringing that up about the evacuation portion of it.
I see. Thank you. I feel like it does not change the way I want to see the language. I mean, at this point, does other committee member have any thoughts on it?
I actually think that that's a good part of the text amendment. I don't personally agree with the way this is written, just because I don't think, if there's a flood and people in nursing homes are stuck in a flood zone, that just is like such a logistical nightmare to try to figure out evacuating them, or if they lose power in that building or something like that. So to me, it makes sense to stop building new nursing homes in the floodplain, but this text amendment does expand that area, and it is a significant part, I guess, of CB3. So it's not a hill I'm willing to die on, but I think it's okay that it's in there.
Okay, other committee members, do you have any thoughts on it? Okay, then I guess before we move back to point number 1, I just remembered Olympia said something about building walls. Do you guys remember that before she left the meeting?
Yeah, do you want me to, I can address it.
I don't recall what she was talking about, but she's...
I have her written notes in front of me because they were emailed out. It's very short. Just give me one moment. Okay, so she said there will also be streetscape impacts due to new flood-resistant construction standards with mandatory wet flood-proof ground floors that could detract from the vibrancy of public space, something intrinsic to CD3's cultural identity. So my only comment on this is I think this is true, a true statement as it stands, kind of on its own. But one thing is the proposal that the city has brought to us today, actually, it's not great, but it requires a more active street wall than the actual current emergency standards allow or actually require. So my only kind of response is it's not perfect because just ground floor floodproofing is kind of ugly by its nature. It's bulky and obtrusive, but this is kind of it. They have made steps in the direction that Olympia is kind of asking for, at least from what exists today. So you could ask for more. I'm not sure what they would be, but it's a little bit better than what exists right now.
Other committee members, do you have an opinion on that? Trevor?
Just some clarification. When you say what exists now, are you talking about the current zoning that they put in place or the previous zoning? In other words, if let's say this doesn't pass, what would they be required to do, if anything, with regards to wet flood proofing?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And I actually really wish DCP was here to answer this, because I actually am concerned that if this doesn't pass, we might lose a lot of the current requirements because they're all mostly emergency measures. They were, the 2013 Coastal Resiliency zoning text was all emergency. And I think there is a sunset on it. I don't know the date or the year, but I imagine if they're pushing this right now, it's probably soon. I should know this. I'm sorry to everybody, but I'm comparing like the incremental change from the 2013 emergency flood resiliency measures to today. And one of the things they've changed is to try to provide more flexibility on like the street wall with like how you could have different types of like entrances and transparency. And I to get more specific, I would have to look at the text again, but I know they've addressed that this is a problem as things exist today. But I also think what exists today may expire if we don't pass something new. I think that's a big driver behind why they're trying to do this.
Connor.
Yeah, hi. Jim is right that I know that the 2015 flood text is set to expire. It says in their original zoning for coastal flood resiliency document that is set to expire in 2020, and the 2013 text, it says it expires within 1 year of the adoption of the new firms, which are expected to be revised by FEMA in the next few years. And this is from the document that they wrote a few years ago, or actually in 2019. So yeah, it's set to expire within the next couple of years.
Thank you, Connor.
Can I just say, for what it's worth, I mean, DCP, when we asked this, they basically said this is pretty much guaranteed to pass, right? Didn't they say that? And so I think that was sort of the reasoning behind our original idea to disapprove of this, was because we thought that would I don't know, make our comments more visible or something to them. But they essentially told us they, you know, just to say, I guess I'm not too concerned about this this not passing. And you know, the points I bring up, I don't think are deal breakers to me. I think it's just, you know, it's just important, and I'm glad that we're doing this again this month, so that they will receive our comments. But it sounded like last month they essentially said this is pretty much guaranteed to go through.
Thank you, Mike. I thought if I remember this correctly, I thought 2015 already expired. In 2013, still have some time to go. And just to put this in context, for point number 1 or point number 2, Jim, I remember from last meeting that DCP was saying that 2013, the zoning actually is more relaxed than what they are proposing right now. They actually are give more a bonus in terms of square footage for properties owners. However, DCP, according to them, properties owners still wouldn't want to go through the resilience improvement, even with better, more generous zoning codes. So I feel like this is just a context I want to put maybe on the second point, that to emphasize that certain type of certain scale of properties owners just are not able to do it because of the financial consideration. Even if you give them like higher incentive. I don't know if it makes sense.
Let me try to, is it helpful if I address those and just everything? I'll try to do it very quickly in order. So the first thing was the expiration of the existing flood texts. The 2013 flood text is going to expire when the new FEMA flood insurance maps are issued. So there was some contingency that it's based on the new maps being issued, and that's expected in the next year or two, I believe. The 2015 coastal, the recovery text, that's what they called it, that expired in 2020 already over the summer. So that's all correct. What Michael said also is correct. They said, look, it's a citywide text amendment. It has pretty broad support from a lot of the community boards, and it certainly has support, I think, from some of the council members. So it's probably going to pass. I wouldn't guarantee that, but probably. And I think you could think of exactly what Michael's saying, right? You can frame your response with that in mind. Even DCP admitted that. And then the question of like how the incentives are working, because we do have like this model of the program that exists currently. In some areas, they are making the requirements more restrictive. It's not like significantly more restrictive. I don't think it's going to make or break someone participating or not participating, but it was things like they capped the amount of like transferable or exempted floor area for commercial spaces to no more than 10,000 feet rather than like the whole ground floor. So it's just like little tweaks around the edges. It is slightly more restrictive than is allowed today. They also admitted, right, and I think this is going to get to another point that a number of you have brought up, that despite it being quote unquote like more permissive today, they've actually had relatively little participation in this like program as it exists, which I think should point you all to your therefore about why like additional subsidy is very important here, and that zoning alone both like it isn't functional to like achieve this as a goal, but also hasn't proven to do that, right? There's actually a track record here. I don't think that's incompatible with like, you know, you could approve the zoning text and say it doesn't work without, or you can approve up pieces of the zoning text and say it doesn't work without additional incentive. I don't think those are incompatible positions, if that's kind of like the universe people are swirling around. So I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. That is really helpful. I want to know if committee members have any other thoughts, because I think, Jim, have you already finished your language for the first point? Yeah,
so maybe if you're ready to it, what I could do is I could paste it in the chat and read it out loud. Someone's going to have to, we're not really doing this procedurally in the right way. Someone's going to have to move, you know, to insert this at a certain place in the resolution, but I can introduce the language.
Yeah, because my plan is that we all agree on these points, and then I would just ask someone to introduce it, to motion that and move that all the points to the wrestle.
Okay, so I'll copy this, and I'm going to recommend that you just input both of these as whereas clauses after the like bullet point list of the regulations. So I'm pasting them in the chat now, and I'm going to read them, and let's see if this matches what everyone was hoping for. So I'm saying, whereas these regulations rely on floor area exemptions to facilitate the flood proofing of ground floor spaces and to encourage the elevation of mechanical infrastructure in new and substantially improved buildings. And while these exemptions cannot exceed the ground floor area of the building, it does provide owners with an opportunity to move one floor of developable floor area to a higher elevation. And whereas these regulations are easier for highly capitalized new developments to take advantage of, and the same regulatory incentives are not as financially viable for existing building owners, which may further exacerbate built fabric inequities in CD3, with newer buildings having stronger resiliency infrastructure in place. A lot of this was just copied and pasted from what Olympia sent in and what Lisa wrote. And so trying to incorporate everyone's language into that.
Here's the problem. If we do it this way, because like in the beginning of the meeting, we agreed that we are not changing the existing whereas clauses. We are not adding more. We are just putting the comments under the be resolved. But if we are doing this like this format right now, like provide whereas clauses to each be resolved clauses, then we have to add whereas clauses to each other points.
Well, you know, a therefore clause has to have sort of an actionable position, right? I mean, what was submitted here was more of the community board's assessment of or description of the efficacy of the program. I mean, you can change it to a therefore, but I don't know what's the ask there if it was a therefore. I mean, I feel like the ask I'm hearing is that we not rely exclusively on zoning measures and also prioritize, you know, direct subsidy or tax incentives or whatever to make this viable for all types of buildings. I mean, I'm happy to change it to a therefore if someone can figure out how to.
No, it wouldn't be, the way we wrote it was that there would be one, therefore be it resolved that we're opposing based on the following concerns and observations.
Okay.
So those points that you've raised would be the concerns, and one of the concerns would be among the concerns and observations.
Okay, so I misunderstood. So basically there'll be kind of like a bulleted list of like the rationale for why we have taken this therefore.
Exactly.
Correct.
Okay, then ignore that I wrote whereas, but you can use that text and edit it however however.
And I'm also gonna test the water because I don't know how you guys think about it, because from what I heard from all of you, are we going to stick to the same position, or you guys are comfortable to change the position a little bit, or you guys think it's okay, we can continue to disapprove this result and just add these comments?
Well, sorry, Lisa, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just talking out loud. I'm fine opposing it, but I think we should have as one of the observations something to the effect of that although this zoning text amendment is well intentioned in its effort to address critical issues in New York City's climate change, something to that effect.
Okay.
But, yeah.
And my only quick comment, and I will be quiet after this, is you're free to reconsider the position you've taken, but I would recommend that it's probably easier to do that once you've agreed on some language. You could look at the resolution as a whole and see if it's something that's worth approving or disapproving, but I feel like it can be a little confusing to do it while you're actively crafting the actual language. So
Okay.
people could think about it, but I would maybe wait just because it's hard to do that, I think.
Right, you're right. So Jim will wait for your paragraphs, and then we're gonna move to insert those language to the result and then decide if the position should.
Can you insert what I pasted in the chat and just take out?
Yeah,
as?
Can people see the draft reso on the screen, or is it still the other the point about the nursing homes?
It's still the nursing homes.
Okay, 1 second. I need to change my screen share. Okay. I just dropped in those 2 paragraphs and took out the whereases, but I think we have a few more. I don't know if people are comfortable with this formatting.
Some language that Lisa provided earlier.
So that point Lisa added, are people, should I put that as a number 3?
No, it should be number 1, I think.
Number 1, okay.
Do we have do you have that paragraph?
In the chat.
CB3 is concerned, that paragraph?
No,
that because
let me see.
That's, I think he's talking about the one that's sort of the qualifier.
Although
yeah, I can send it. I can.
Thank you.
It would just be sort of an intro to one or the other of these.
I think I see you've written something like that it's the second
right.
in Jackie's document.
Yes, there it is again. Just leave off. I didn't mean to. Yeah,
oh,
leave this
Lisa
part.
is right. Yep.
The one Lisa dropped, right? Not
yep.
Jackie's.
Yeah.
Right.
And so we want that to be a whereas, or we want that to be point number 1?
I want that to be although.
But not with the last after the comma. Just leave it.
Well, we don't need to use the word although. Just CCFR
right.
is well intended. So skip, remove although and then put it as point number 1.
Okay. Oops.
Got to do a little grammar change there, addresses to address.
Thank you.
I need a magnifier to see that.
Looks good.
Sorry, Jackie, what did you say?
No, it's okay. I was just joking. I mean,
Oh, okay.
because that is too small. I can't see it really well.
Oh, I can zoom in more.
I wonder
I'm
if
sorry.
it's my computer problem.
Folks,
Oh,
No,
thank you.
it's yeah, no,
I can just comment for a moment. You have options in the way you view the document yourself. If you look up at the top of your screen, it says view options. And if you drop that little arrow down, you will see
Oh,
zoom ratio. And you can, if you have trouble watching, you can zoom it up to 150,
I see.
200%, and you'll be able to see it very well.
Thank you. That's why you are the Zoom master.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Thank you. Thank you.
I don't want to be a master though, and I don't want to be the Zoom mistress either.
Oh. No.
Did we, so the point Lisa posted at 7:30, a little bit higher up in the chat, did we want to put that in as well?
Yeah, that was intended to address your point, Michael,
Yeah.
about, this. There is sort of a bigger question about whether we should be just addressing issues of buildings in the floodplain and not thinking broader about
I
development.
really like this point, but I'm not sure how other people feel, if they're comfortable adding it in.
I like it.
Okay. Should we do it as maybe number 4?
Yeah.
This is a very silly question that I should know, but do we format it this way? CB number 3?
CB3. CB3.
It's
Just
CB.
Remove the pound. Yeah, we just
Yeah,
use CB3.
Sometimes and sometimes we're saying CD3, so.
Should we say CB for like that for all of them?
Yeah, there was some determination a while ago that that was what we would standardize on.
Okay. Just CB space 3.
Yeah.
Cool.
The only thing is, if this is citywide, that's why I did Manhattan in there once.
Yeah.
'Cause there is a CB3 in all 5 boroughs.
Oh, true.
And Mike, can you take the points from other file and put it there so we could take the non-conforming and also the nursing home and move it to this file?
Sure, yeah, let me see. The point about
non-conforming use.
Yes. Are we comfortable just with this whole paragraph?
I mean, I asked everybody if everybody has any thoughts about it, and it looks like people are comfortable with it.
Okay. And then the nursing home point as well.
Right, in nursing home.
Okay. I'm sorry, am I sharing the reso? No.
No.
No,
Sorry about that.
there you go. That's good.
Okay, so I added those 3 points.
So maybe we did it.
Do we have that second point in the reso? Regarding
Oh, right.
zoning is not the best tool. Do we have that here?
Oh, no, you're right. We don't.
So we still need a couple more minutes.
Yeah, can I'm getting a little confused because I think I've looked at too many versions of this. I'm going to drop something in the chat that you could consider if you want. I think actually Lisa wrote something better, but I can't find it right now. So I will drop something in about this and use it if you want to.
I can drop it again. Mine.
It's
Why don't
just
you do
the-
that, Lisa? Because
It's-
like I sent your language to everybody already. So why don't you drop it?
I have it, just that document in the matrix. The zoning may not be the best way to address particularities.
Yeah.
Did we want to put it as number 3 in the list, or does it matter? Should I just put it at the end?
To be honest with you, Michael, we need to read everything. So
Okay.
to make sure the order is the flow is good.
Okay. Yeah. that
Jim,
makes
do you
sense.
have something to say? Did you raise your hand?
No, I didn't mean to. I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I think we have all the points, right?
Yeah.
So Michael, can I trouble you? Maybe just read it out and then we decide if there's any changes needs to be made.
Do you want me to read the whole
No,
reso, or
just
the four?
just from the therefore be resolved.
Okay, yeah, no problem. Just move the chat box. Okay, so it says, therefore be it resolved, Community Board 3 disapproves of application N21009-5ZRY, the zoning for coastal flood resiliency, citywide zoning text amendment with the following concerns and observations. The ZCFR is well-intentioned in its efforts to address the critical issues New York City faces as climate change and coastal risk threaten a significant portion of the infrastructure of our city, including a very vulnerable portion of Manhattan CB3. And these regulations rely on floor area exemptions to facilitate the flood proofing of ground floor spaces and to encourage elevation of mechanical infrastructure in new and substantially improved buildings. And while these exemptions cannot exceed the ground floor area of the building, it does not provide owners with an opportunity to move one floor of developable floor area to a higher elevation. And these regulations are easier for highly capitalized new developments to take advantage of, and the same regulatory incentives are not as financially viable for existing building owners and may further exacerbate built fabric inequities in CB3 with newer buildings having stronger resiliency infrastructure in place. And zoning may not be the best way to address particularities of the various neighborhoods most at risk. And particularly, it does not address the needs of higher density existing buildings, which are not required to renovate and which, because they may house low and moderate income residents, do not have sufficient funds to make the significant investments in resiliency improvements that the ZCFR permits. To accommodate real resiliency in our communities, subsidies would be necessary. And CB3 is concerned that because the ZCFR concentrates on issues related to development in the floodplain, however, there is considerable thought that because of ongoing climate change, development in such vulnerable areas should be curtailed and redirected to more sustainable areas. It behooves the city to think more comprehensively about this question. And CB3 is concerned about the provision of the ZCFR relating to grandfathered non-conforming commercial uses in residential districts, section 65-13, discontinuance provisions. CB3 has had a large number of complaints over the past 10 years because of conflict between businesses and residents caused by grandfathered non-conforming commercial uses on residential streets. Examples of this are generally bars open till 4 a.m. on residential street. Until 4 a.m. on residential streets with bedrooms on the street. This was caused by a lack of enforcement to zoning regulations for many years. This commercial use reverts back to residential use, providing much needed housing when vacant for 2 years. The current amendment would suspend this 2-year period of vacancy to revert back to residential. And CB3 objects to the provision of the ZCFR, which imposes a particularly harsh restriction on nursing homes. Nursing home beds are needed in, sorry, Lisa, do you have something?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have interrupted, but the last sentence of number 6, I don't think is what we mean. The current amendment would not suspend, but extend the 2-year period of vacancy.
Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Nope, no problem. CB3 objects to the, number 7, CB3 objects to the provision of the ZCFR, which imposes a particularly harsh restriction on nursing homes. Nursing home beds are needed in Community District 3, and limiting their expansion on the floodplain would rule out a significant part of the district for potential expansion of this important use. Other critical medical facilities such as hospitals, community health clinics, and supportive housing are not limited by the ZCFR, and the risk imposed to nursing home facilities located in flood-prone areas should be mitigated by emergency protocols and infrastructure upgrades rather than zoning.
Thank you, Michael. I have two comments. First is for point number 4. The last sentence before 2, I think that is a space that need to be removed. And also for point number 5, thank you. For point number 5, I feel like point number 5 goes back to our very early discussion whether this plan spurred more development or not. I mean, you guys can talk about the language. I feel like the language, does the language like implying that? Or are you guys okay with the language?
No, I'm okay with the language because I don't think this implies that, you know, there's no, this isn't saying like it encourages, you know, more development. It's just saying that, you know, there's, you know, there's a line of thinking that says that we shouldn't continue as is. Sorry, my dog is going crazy. We shouldn't continue as is in high risk flood areas. And so this is sort of just addressing that. It's not necessarily saying that this like encourages overdevelopment or something like that.
Yeah, my original wording did, but I changed it to take that out and just say that it.
Oh, okay. Maybe I was still reading.
Yeah, I think you were looking at the old wording.
The old one, yeah, okay. Other committee members, do you have any comments? Other comments about the
Hi, Jackie.
Hi, Herman.
In 4, that last line you were thinking about, sentence, and it said that subsidies would be necessary. Are we talking about subsidy new construction or subsidies to existing housing? Something like that.
You want it to be more specific? Is that what you meant?
What I was thinking about in terms of being more specific of who would need the subsidies.
Maybe because we say that maybe we could say to accommodate real resiliency in our community, subsidies would be necessary, especially for those low and moderate income developments or something like that.
And small property owners, if they wanted it.
Oh, so you want it to be more specific for small properties owners? Is that what you meant?
Yeah.
I see.
Because the reason I'm saying that, I've done 3 buildings, right?
Mm-hmm.
And some of the things that is necessary near was done on those buildings, but it's not because of would be this program. It's only because
Is Herman frozen?
Looks like it.
Oh.
And those needed subsidies.
Herman, I think we lost you because your computer just frozen. We lost you a big part of it.
Yeah, okay. What is you hearing me now?
Yeah.
I said that the buildings that conform to this in terms of was done not because of we were considering about floods, but because the property was being built on places where the water table was too high. We couldn't do that, so we put all those systems on the roof. But during Sandy, two of those buildings, we needed subsidy for those affordable house buildings in order to conform to this kind of system.
So that's exactly the point with this trying to make. I don't understand what.
What I was saying, just to be
It's not strong.
just to be specific
strongly enough.
of who would get the subsidy.
Oh,
Not some-
so
The sentence before says, because these may house low and moderate income residents, there are not sufficient funds available to make this investment. To accommodate real resiliency in our community, subsidies would be necessary.
Yeah.
something like that.
That's what
how
it
about
says.
this? How about this, Herman? If we add to accommodate real resilience improvement or resilience construction in our community, subsidies would be necessary. Would that be more specific for you? Or is too redundant?
No, it's okay, except I'm figuring, suppose I want to develop a new building. And I could afford to do that doing the new building.
Right. And for new building,
Say a private developer. Would that subsidy go to a private developer who would develop their buildings from the start, and they would include the expenses for providing
I think
that?
throughout our discussion, the subsidy is intended for the existing buildings, not really for new buildings. But I guess other committee members can.
That's what I'm asking. How could that be put in there so that we know that a big developer wouldn't come in and say, well, I'm going to do that because you asked me to do it. I need subsidy from the government or somebody.
Well, I think number three addresses that, right? And number 4.
It says higher density existing buildings.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah,
new
it's-
development.
Yeah, so the language already covered that, Herman, like to make sure existing building owners, we want to encourage the government to fund the resilience construction for the existing building owners, like tenement buildings in Lower East Side or tenement buildings in East Village. That is what we want to encourage, although DCP may not take that role, but like Damaris said before, you provide context. Damaris, you have a point? You have a question?
I was just gonna say that, I mean, I'm not sure, you know, that at this point, having that discussion is really gonna change anything, because this is regarding zoning, and we're writing to DCP, and we're just providing them with I think a rationale for why we're not supporting their zoning recommendations as they stand. If we were sending this to HPD or to one of the city agencies that may be able to provide some kind of resource to subsidy, then I think it makes sense to spend time and be thorough.
Yeah.
But we don't expect that they're going to adopt this. We just want them to understand why.
I agree.
I agree.
Thank you. I think we are done with the wordings, and now it goes back to our position. I want to ask everyone again, consider everything was discussed before us. Do we still want to, I mean, I really don't have any thoughts about that. Do we still want to disapprove this application or take a more nuanced position, or, I mean, something like that? I mean, I want to open this for discussion right now.
I would like to continue disapproving, Jackie, and if we try to change it, probably have 3 more hours to go.
No, first of all, the comments, we are not changing the comments anymore. But I respect your point to continue to disapprove it. I don't have any problem. I just want to tell you that if we are changing the position, it would not be another 3 hours. It's only going to be like 2 minutes, maybe, I don't know. I mean, but I want to hear from you guys. Like,
may I ask, is there a reason why you're asking us to reconsider this that we voted on
yes,
last time? Like, is there, what is it that you're suggesting? And you know,
no, the reason I asked that question is because, first of all, we are allowed to change that because we didn't adopt any position in the last full board. So we are allowed that. That is first thing in my mind. And the second thing in my mind is what Michael brought up a little bit earlier, that this text amendment probably going to pass anyway. And that's why I want to bring that question to the table again, but we don't have to if you guys choose not to. I just thought that I want to bring it to your attention. That's it.
May I make a comment then?
Go ahead.
I don't know that, well, for me, whether we voted or passed it last time, I thought that at the committee level, we had agreed that we disapproved it, which is why we're having this conversation now and writing out this rationale. So to some extent, I'd really like to honor that, but I understand that folks want to take up, you know, the conversation and change it. With that being said, for me, that they're going to pass it anyway is not a rationale, I think, at this point for changing it, unless we think that, you know, not changing it puts us in some sort of a weaker position moving forward in the future for some sort of reason, and that's not a position that we want to be in. I think if that is the case, if that is not the case, I say we leave it and we put on the record that, you know, this is our position. And I think we've given them plenty of meaningful feedback as to why we think this, and they're going to do what they're going to do at that point. But at least they know this is where we stand, so that if we ever have to go back and look at or defend or recommend, we have these, you know, points to reflect on.
I'm okay with that, Damaris. Other committee members, do you guys feeling the same way or have different thoughts? Michael is agreeing with Damaris.
I agree.
Okay, Herman agree. Okay, Dominic agree. So it looks like we have quite a few thoughts. And Linda?
I would just say that maybe slightly disapproving would get a little more attention than approving.
Okay, so you also disagree. Okay, that's good. So we are not changing the position. That's good. That is just makes my life easier. So at that point, I need someone to motion that we adopt this position and also with these comments.
So move.
Thank you. Anyone second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Oh, we have to do roll calling, or do we just?
Yeah.
I think we need to do roll calling
We
on
can,
this,
it
Michael.
could be the closing roll call too, can it?
Yeah, let's do that. So like I thank everyone for making the contribution to this wrestle. Last month, I think our understanding with this wrestle was very much different. And I think with 1 more month of time, we were able to do a lot of more reading and study on the issue and to come to this conclusion. And I thank everyone who helped me getting the wrestle done. And this is almost the end of the meeting. So I'm just gonna say that this roll calling is going to be together with the motion to adjourn the meeting. So that would be just easier for everyone. Michael?
Thank you. Jackie?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Michael, yes. Dominic?
Yes.
Jonathan?
I think he left.
He left, okay. Herman?
Yes.
Trevor?
Yes.
Lisa?
Yes.
Olympia? She's gone.
Safeway.
Damaris?
Yes.
Troy?
Yes.
Thank you. Steve is not here, right?
Nope.
And Tim is not here,
Nope.
right?
Thank you. So the wrestle is passed and we are adjourned for tonight. Thank you, everyone.
all.
Great.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for all the help. Thank you. Okay, good night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Good night.
Thank you, Connor, for joining us tonight. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks.